Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine
What's
a light
your
on
story?
incredible. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission? Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I am your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders, and a power wheelchair user. I'm the Community Relations Manager here at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights advocate and trial attorney, focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today on accessiBe Spotlight Sessions, we're joined by David Kearon, the Director of Adult Services at Autism Speaks. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, excited to have you on today's show, and let's just dive right into it. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Dave. I live on Long Island, New York. We used to be headquartered, Josh, in Manhattan, but like so many other organizations, the pandemic has moved us to pretty much a fully remote workforce. So I have colleagues across the country who work on different aspects of disability advocacy, autism science and research, and then my team focused on kind of the programs and services, the supports and services that people with autism need. I've been at Autism Speaks for a while, about 13 years. And so that means I began when there was no adult service focus. Everything was focused on kids back then, Josh. So I was part of a science research team, and then I really just had lucky timing. When my grant for our science research project was running out and I was going to be out of a job, Autism Speaks was finally beginning to launch an adult service focus as more and more of their constituents were aging into adulthood. And to be honest, more and more board members' kids and grandkids, they were no longer 4 years old. They're now 17. And so everyone had different priorities. And I was very fortunate, I think, to be at the kind of the forefront of that at Autism Speaks.
That's awesome. And what is some of the work that Autism Speak is up to these days?
Yeah, in regards to adults, most of the work has been focused on improving the transition from school into adulthood. So we know how crucial that is, especially because the educational entitlement to those really important support services will end at some point, that we don't get to have those for the rest of our lives. So improving that transition to make sure that people with autism are on a strong trajectory towards whatever goals they might have. If that's living independently, if that's working and supporting oneself, if that's getting married and having a family, whatever it is. We know that those last few years while they're still in school are crucial, and that schools and that support systems need a lot of help to improve that transition. And then the other area that we've had the most excitement, progress, the most investment over the years, Josh, is absolutely employment. And that's where I had the pleasure of meeting you at a conference focused on disability employment. We're kind of on that wave of neurodiversity, autism employment. Our philosophy is we want to help companies devise systems and change cultures and change the way they communicate to help hire autistic first, but not autism only. We think that autism is can be seen as kind of a template disability in some ways because it cuts across so many other categories of disability, of diversity, equity, access, inclusion. And that if you can change your systems and your culture and your communication to serve our really diverse community, you're going to be well on your way to becoming more inclusive of all different people.
So how can people learn more about the Workplace Inclusion Now program, and how can they sign up? How can they get access to services?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. You mentioned the name, and it made me realize I hadn't mentioned it before. So yes, it's called Workplace Inclusion Now, or WIN. So you can go to autismspeaks.org/employment, or just Google Workplace Inclusion Now, and it will take you to the page. Then it will ask you, look, are you a job seeker with autism or a similar difference, by the way? I think our tools can be useful to people with all sorts of differences. I have found the tools designed for autistics to be really useful for me. Because one example, Josh, as part of WIN, we've developed a series of digital courses. So they're very visual, self-paced, courses that use kind of a lot of scenarios, so real life scenarios about trouble that challenges that people with autism sometimes face. And that kind of course is all based on better understanding yourself and improving your self-advocacy skills. So it doesn't have to be autism specific. Like if I'm not getting a support I need, how do I put that into words and how do I effectively communicate that? And that's important self-advocacy skills that we want everyone to learn. So that kind of skill-based learning, visual, self-paced, modular courses is a big part of WIN. So when you first go to the website, you'll be asked, are you a job seeker? Or are you a business looking to hire people? Or importantly, are you in this third bucket? Are you a support provider? Are you a parent? Are you a job coach or a high school transition coordinator? Or maybe you're a state voc rehab counselor? Everyone needs more help, Josh, is kind of our point, and we want to be there for each part of that equation. So that will be something that you're asked when you go to WIN, so that we know which bucket to direct you to.
And the big thing about disability employment journeys is everybody's kind of at a different point in their journey. Some people are at the very beginnings, some people are almost there, some people are there, and everybody needs different supports and services to make sure they maximize their job potential and their ability to work at the highest of level. So it's key to let people know that they don't have to get in line from the beginning day. They can get in and get supports at any point in their journey.
I love the way you said that, Josh, and it actually, I think it's part of the reason why we have a new tool that we call our roadmaps to employment or roadmaps to independent living. And it's exactly that idea. Like, look, there's lots of on-ramps. Wherever you are on your journey, that's great. We want to build an on-ramp for you to now access the system, to learn about what supports are available to you and how do you go about accessing them. It's not easy. As I know you well know, Josh, like these systems are not meant to be easy. And I bet even as a lawyer, you struggle sometimes figuring out what the heck is this saying and what does this really mean for me? A lot of our families feel like when that school bus stops coming at the end of that educational attainment, whether it's at age 22 or 26 in certain states, that parents and families, autistic individuals feel like they've been dropped off a cliff, that they weren't prepared for that transition, that they didn't know what was on the other side waiting for them, that they didn't know how poorly some of these systems were designed. So that's where we want to be, helping in that transition period. And then, like you said, anywhere along that employment journey, that's where we're trying to build more and more supports, learn more and more from autistic adults who have been there, who have been through it. That's if I could add one more thing, Josh, the thing I'm most proud of about WIN is that years ago I would have, or someone like me would have written this curriculum, and then we would have asked autistic people to weigh in and, hey, did we get it right, or do we need to make any changes? I think we finally are starting to get this right, Josh, where autistic people wrote the courses. Of course, they're the ones who have experienced it. They're the ones who have lived it. They're also experts in the field. So they wrote it. They wrote all of our coursework and our consultation practices. And then people like me weigh in and I get to give my advice or whatever. So I think we're finally starting to get it right. And like it took us a long time to hear this. So I want to just say to advocates like you, Josh, like that groups like Autism Speaks and others need to keep hearing about what we're not doing well, as well as the things that are helping.
Well, it's so important to grow as an organization, and hearing you say that there's just so much, having programs, having people having the right people having a seat at the table from the beginning of new programs gives you an opportunity to do it right from the beginning, rather than trying to figure it all out and then as an afterthought bringing people back. So it makes me so happy to hear that, because that's the best model forward with development of programs for the disability community. And what I'm hearing over and over again is that you don't want any of the families that need supports to feel like they're alone, and that at any point within that on-ramp, there's services in place, people in place, information in place to help guide them. So they've got someone to have their back.
You just nailed like the founding purpose of Autism Speaks. Was a group of grandparents who didn't know where else to turn. Like, where do I find resources? How do I find other people like me, or who experience autism like we do? So that was the purpose, to let families know that you're not alone. That maybe you're the only one in your school district right now, but there's many of us out there. And of course, now it's become so much more common. So it's really building that community, that you're safe, that there are people who have been through this already, who have blazed the trail, and we can learn from lessons that they've learned, and we can share those. So that's a really effective part of not just Autism Speaks. I would say the autistic community as a whole is that kind of community support.
And when, let's say, businesses want to do more to hire autistic people, where can they go to also get access to that talent pool? Is there? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, and that's the big question on the minds of a lot of these companies, right? So that is part of what we can help a company build through WIN. Like, there's no, I guess to answer your question, there is no like database, Josh, right? There's no like list of autistics living in Milwaukee who want to work, and companies kind of want that to exist. It just doesn't in the United States anyway. We don't track people like that by disability, at least not after they're out of school. So what we can do, though, and what we are helping businesses build, is kind of networks of pipelines to talent with disabilities. So we help a business understand, hey, there are actually dozens and dozens of community organizations all around you serving people with disabilities. You just might not realize it. We can help you we will make introductions for you to your state vocational rehabilitation counselors and to some approved providers who have probably been doing this for decades in your community. You just don't know who they are. So we help kind of build a network, a pipeline of talent that includes universities and community colleges too, that have student disability services offices, or in many more cases, every year we see more and more colleges that have autism or neurodiverse specific programming. So we can plug these employers into these networks.
And can you tell our audience a little bit more about what is neurodiverse? What is a neurodivergent? What is that?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Josh. So, neurodivergence means basically neurologically different from the norm, right? So what we're talking about is not just autism. Autism is one condition that's considered different from the neurological norm. It includes all sorts of learning differences and other brain differences. So ADHD is one that a lot of people will kind of mention in here. Tourette's syndrome, lots of neurological differences. The other important thing, though, about neurodiversity or neurodivergence is it's also kind of more of a political movement. It is about reframing disability in terms of positive framework. Look, disability, the reason why you have an autism diagnosis is because of things you can't do. And people in this movement are tired of looking at disability that way. That we want to look at what people are capable of doing. Where are the strengths? Where are your passions? Okay, you have trouble with these things, that's fine. So let's leverage your strengths. And I think that's a big part of this movement, is to reframe how we look at disability. And it's more looking at difference. And in some cases, strength, right? In some cases, some people are particularly good at certain skill sets or tasks because of their difference, like autism. And neurodiversity movement, I think, does a better job of like embracing those strengths.
Embracing those strengths and then doing something to enhance them. I know for myself, I really do not like the word accommodation that much, because I feel like too often people think of having accommodation means that you're weak or that you need help. But like in all honesty, accommodations for me provide an even playing field or allow me to be even better at what I'm doing. So like I think of it more as a performance enhancer. What can you do to give people with disabilities and their unique abilities the right tools in place, the right atmospheres in place, environments to be able to shine and to show all the awesomeness that they have, and to do it day in, day out, and to work to their full potential.
Exactly, Josh. One of my autistic team members doesn't like accommodation either, and she prefers adjustments. And honestly, it's like that question I asked in the beginning, when I was describing our course for self advocates. Look, if I'm getting all the supports I need to bring my best self to work, great, I'm good. But like, if you're not getting everything you need, if I could use, I'm looking for I had like the blue light glasses, right? Because if I'm on screen all day, yeah, I have a headache at the end of the day. I don't need to call this an accommodation, and I also don't need to send an email to HR, and it doesn't cost anyone anything. This is a simple adjustment I make to give myself the ability to do my best work. And I'm
Well,
not sure why we have to overcomplicate these things sometimes when it comes to people with disabilities.
a lot of business don't recognize that the quote unquote reasonable accommodations that are built in to the ADA and others is that 50% of them don't cost anything, and
Zero, right?
the rest, the majority of all other accommodations that you can get are likely under $500. It's not
Yep.
like $10,000 is what's going to cost you, and which a lot of businesses think that hiring somebody with a disability is going to cost them an arm and a leg, but no, it's not.
No, you're absolutely right. And I really like the Job Accommodation Network as a resource. You can find autism specific ideas, and scenarios, but there's a whole list, for all sorts of different conditions or differences. But yeah, that is one of the fears and misunderstandings, I think, Josh, that keeps some businesses away from doing this. They overestimate how much this is going to cost. They have some fear of liability, like some vague fear that something horrible is going to happen, and they're not going to know how to handle it, or they're not going to be able to terminate someone with a disability. So that kind of risk or fear of the unknown is what we're having to over and over again help businesses overcome.
And having the right conversations around this gets you to be more comfortable rather than being reactive or forcing a conversation. The more we talk about this, the more training there is. And you're talking about your training courses, and they exist both for job seekers, employees, and for companies, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I mentioned the course for job seekers that's focused on self advocacy, but then there are courses for businesses, and there we have like a longer course for HR and supervisors. So if you're going to be a direct manager of an autistic person, you need a little bit more training, a little bit more of those scenarios, common miscommunications, common tips to avoid these things or to make sure that you're being proactive. But then we have a shorter one for coworkers. Like, we're not asking coworkers to become experts, right? Just to become more aware of how people might present differently, and then how can you best support a coworker, or how can you best communicate with them. And then lastly, Josh, I mentioned that third bucket is like the community. So that's where we have courses for voc rehab counselors. If you're a job coach and you think I need some more education about autism or what it looks like in the workplace, that's the course for you. And we have our final course that just launched is we did for community colleges that are graduating students into certain fields. So in this case, manufacturing. And our partner, Stanley Black & Decker, they've recruited from the same community colleges for generations, like 100 years. When they need welders or whatever, they go to their local community college and they know they're going to get good candidates. But they almost never include candidates with disabilities. So we're going to help the colleges do better and help them attract and retain, support autistic students, and hopefully graduate more to great companies like Stanley Black & Decker. So that's kind of the comprehensive approach we're trying to take with WIN.
I love that. And like, if you had one message for business owners or the business community of why they should cater to more of the neurodivergent talent that exists out there, what would it be?
This is a great business decision. That this will this will improve your bottom line. This will make your culture better. This will make your teams stronger. So just one plug for an interesting article in the Harvard Business Review a few years ago, Josh. but it compared the different makeups of teams on a problem-solving task. So they wanted to see, like, if we mix up by age, by gender, by educational attainment, by where people are from, none of those things mattered. They performed pretty much the same. When you mixed teams based on their cognitive styles, so based on the way they think, based on the way they approach the world, when you had diversity of thinkers, that's when you had innovation and you had efficiency, and was the only type of team that would set itself apart. So stop recruiting people who look like you and sound like you and went to the same school as you did and went to the same frat. Hire people intentionally because they think differently than you, and look for people with disabilities because they bring a really valuable viewpoint.
You definitely have a lot more better conversations, more interesting conversations when everybody doesn't sound alike and speaks the same tone, same conversation. So completely agree with you. And Dave, I just want to thank you so much for being our guest today and sharing more about yourself, more about Autism Speaks and what you're up to these days. And just to all of our viewers, thank you for staying till the end. And Dave, you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thanks, Josh. You too.